Roman soldiers conquered the world while eating bread so hard it could break your teeth, wine mixed with vinegar that would make you vomit, and a fermented fish sauce so putrid that modern people can't even smell it without gagging. But here's the shocking part. This wasn't punishment food. This was considered nutritious, delicious, and essential for military success. I'm your host, and what you're about to discover will completely change how you think about ancient military life. These 8 shocking foods that Roman legionaries ate daily were so disgusting that some would rather face enemy armies than choke down another meal. Hit subscribe right now, because the next 12 minutes will reveal military rations so revolting they make modern army food look like gourmet cuisine. The survival reality. But first, understand this. Roman soldiers didn't eat this food because they wanted to. They ate it because it was engineered for survival. Every disgusting ingredient, every nauseating combination, every revolting preparation method was designed to keep 150,000 legionaries alive and fighting across 3 continents. Romans had solved problems that modern military nutritionists are still working on. How do you feed massive armies with food that won't spoil, provides complete nutrition, and can be prepared anywhere with minimal equipment? We're counting down 8 shocking Roman military foods. And I'm warning you, food number 1 was so disgusting that some soldiers preferred to go hungry rather than eat it. Chapter 1. Hardtack, buccellatum, bread that could break bones. Roman military bread called buccellatum wasn't bread as we know it. It was essentially edible rocks that soldiers had to soak in water, wine, or their own saliva just to make it chewable without breaking their teeth. This wasn't bad baking, this was food engineering. Buccellatum was baked multiple times until all moisture was removed, creating bread that could last for years without spoiling, and survive any climate from Germanic forests to African deserts. Here's what soldiers actually had to do. Take a piece of buccellatum, soak it in whatever liquid was available, then gnaw on it like a dog with a bone. Many soldiers developed jaw problems from years of trying to eat bread that was harder than most modern crackers. When water wasn't available, soldiers would soak their buccellatum in wine, vinegar, or even urine to soften it enough to eat. The bread would absorb whatever liquid was used, creating a soggy, foul-tasting mush that provided calories but no pleasure. Chapter 2. Posca, wine that wasn't wine. Roman soldiers drank posca daily, a mixture of water, vinegar, and sometimes wine that was so acidic it could strip paint, and so sour it made most people's faces contort in disgust with every sip. But posca wasn't torture, it was brilliant military engineering. The high acidity killed bacteria in questionable water sources, provided vitamin C to prevent scurvy, and could be made anywhere with basic ingredients. Think about this. You're a Roman soldier marching 20 miles a day in full armor, and your only drink is essentially drinking vinegar mixed with water. How do you force yourself to swallow something that acidic multiple times per day? Ancient sources describe posca as so sour that new recruits would often vomit after their first taste. Veterans learned to gulp it quickly without breathing through their nose to minimize the overwhelming vinegar smell and taste. Garum, rotted fish sauce, 245 to 345. Garum was Roman soldiers' favorite condiment, a fermented fish sauce made from fish guts, salt, and herbs that were left to rot in the sun for months until they created a brown liquid that smelled like death but tasted like concentrated ocean. Here's how they made it. Take fish intestines, blood, and scraps. Mix with large amounts of salt. Leave in clay pots in direct sunlight for 2 to 6 months while the mixture fermented and liquefied into a brown sludge. The smell was so overwhelming that garum production facilities had to be located outside cities because the stench would make entire neighborhoods uninhabitable. Yet soldiers craved this stuff and put it on everything they ate. But here's what's truly shocking. Garum was so rich in umami and protein that soldiers became psychologically addicted to it. They would rather eat terrible food with garum than good food without it. Laridum, rancid pork fat. Roman soldiers carried laridum, chunks of pork fat that had been salted and dried, but often went rancid during long campaigns. creating meat that was green, slimy, and smelled like corpses, but was still considered edible. The salting process sometimes failed, especially in humid climates, leaving soldiers with pork fat that had turned various shades of green and brown, while developing textures that ranged from slimy to rock hard. Soldiers were expected to eat this rancid fat anyway, because it provided essential calories and fats needed for energy during long marches. They would scrape off the worst parts and swallow the rest, often while holding their breath. Imagine being so hungry that you're willing to eat meat that's green, slimy, and smells like death, because it's the only protein available for hundreds of miles. How desperate would you have to be? Mulsum militaris, honey wine gone wrong. Mulsum militaris was military honey wine that often fermented incorrectly during campaigns, creating an alcoholic beverage that tasted like vinegar mixed with rotten fruit but still provided calories and minimal alcohol content. Without proper temperature control, the honey wine would develop wild yeast infections that created off flavors so intense they could make hardened soldiers gag. But alcohol was alcohol, and calories were calories. Soldiers would hold their noses and gulp down mulsum that had gone so wrong it was essentially alcoholic vinegar with a honey aftertaste that lingered for hours after drinking. Here's the psychology. After months of campaign stress, soldiers would drink anything with alcohol content, even if it tasted like it had been filtered through dirty socks and left in the sun for weeks. Acetum, concentrated vinegar shots. When Pasca wasn't available, Roman soldiers drank straight acetum, concentrated vinegar that was so acidic it could burn your throat and stomach lining, but was considered essential medicine for digestive problems and energy. Romans believed acetum prevented disease, aided digestion, and provided energy for long marches. Soldiers were required to drink it like medicine, taking small shots throughout the day to maintain health. The concentrated vinegar would cause immediate burning in the mouth and throat, often triggering coughing fits and tears, but soldiers had to drink it anyway as part of their daily routine. Think about taking shots of pure vinegar multiple times per day while marching in full armor under the Mediterranean sun. How long before your stomach lining gives up completely? Chapter 6. Pullus mortuus, dead chicken stew. When Romans could catch chickens during campaigns, they often had to eat them after they'd started to spoil, because there was no refrigeration and no time to cook them fresh. The result was chicken stew that tasted like death, but provided necessary protein. Soldiers would broil spoiled chicken with whatever herbs and salt they had available, creating a stew that was safe to eat. The boiling killed bacteria, but smelled and tasted like rotting poultry. This wasn't choice, it was survival. When you're marching 20 miles per day and haven't had protein in weeks, you eat whatever dead animals you can find, regardless of how long they've been dead. Picture sitting around a campfire with your fellow soldiers, stirring a pot of stew that smells like death, knowing you have to eat it or collapse from protein deficiency on tomorrow's march. Silphium subtuve, mystery plant medicine. The most shocking Roman military food was various plant substitutes for silphium, an extinct plant that soldiers ate for birth control and digestive health. Nobody knows what these substitutes actually were, but ancient sources describe them as incredibly bitter, nauseating, and foul-tasting. When real silphium became extinct from overharvesting, Roman military doctors created substitutes from unknown plants that had similar supposed medical properties, but tasted so horrible that soldiers had to be ordered to consume them. We have no idea what plants Romans used as silphium substitutes, but ancient sources describe soldiers vomiting, developing rashes, and suffering digestive problems after consuming these mystery medicines that they were required to take. Imagine being ordered to eat an unknown plant that tastes so horrible it makes you vomit, but you have to consume it anyway. Roman soldiers were essentially human test subjects for unknown plant medicines that military doctors thought might be beneficial, but had no real evidence for effectiveness or safety. The survival science behind the disgust. Why did Roman soldiers eat such disgusting food? Because every nauseating ingredient served a crucial survival purpose that kept armies functioning across impossible distances and conditions. Hard bread prevented spoilage, vinegar killed bacteria, fermented fish sauce provided complete proteins, and rancid fat delivered essential calories. Romans had solved food preservation problems that modern armies still struggle with. Soldiers developed psychological coping mechanisms for eating disgusting food, eating quickly without breathing, thinking about other things while chewing, and focusing on the calories rather than the taste. Here's what's remarkable. Roman soldiers conquered the world while eating food so disgusting that it would make modern people vomit. Their tolerance for revolting food was actually a military advantage. Despite being disgusting, Roman military rations provided complete nutrition that kept soldiers healthy and strong enough to march 20+ miles per day in full armor while fighting battles and building fortifications. The modern comparison. Modern military MREs, meals ready to eat, are gourmet cuisine compared to what Roman soldiers ate daily. Today's worst army food would have been considered luxury dining by Roman legionaries. Roman soldiers who could force themselves to eat rancid pork fat and drink vinegar shots had developed mental toughness that translated into battlefield effectiveness. If you could stomach your daily rations, you could handle enemy attacks. Romans who could eat anything, anywhere, anytime, had a massive logistical advantage over enemies who needed fresh, palatable food. Roman armies could campaign in regions where other forces would starve. Final chapter. And there you have it. 8 shocking foods that Roman soldiers had to choke down daily while conquering the ancient world. These weren't punishment rations. They were cutting-edge military nutrition designed to keep armies alive and fighting under impossible conditions. Roman soldiers didn't conquer the world despite eating disgusting food. They conquered it because they could eat disgusting food and keep fighting while their enemies worried about palatable meals. Which Roman military food disgusted you the most? The rock-hard bread, the rotted fish sauce, the mystery plant medicine? Let me know in the comments, and tell me if you think you could survive on Roman military rations for a week. If you love discovering the shocking realities behind ancient military life, you absolutely need to subscribe right now. Next week, I'm revealing Roman torture methods so systematic they turn cruelty into a science. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and remember, sometimes the most successful armies are the ones that can survive on food that would kill their enemies' appetites and morale. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history.